Hey y'all! All right, first official video of the post-competition series. Well, there was the intro, but this is like the first topic. And it is post-show eating. Like, what do you do right after the show? If you are like a normal competitor, you are pretty hungry at this point. You're probably craving a lot of things. And I don't give two shits if you're a flexible dieter or not. Listen, if you're actually lean and you're dieting enough and your body fat is low, one, you're gonna want to eat everything in sight. Two, you're not gonna be fitting in things that are like what you're wanting. Like, let's just be honest. That's just my personal opinion on it. And I would say that especially as calories get lower, you should be eating mostly whole foods and mostly like nutrient dense options and not like garbage because you are so limited on your calories. Anyways, that was a little rant. So most people are going to want to go out after their show, right? But things can get really, really, really bad really quick right afterwards. So I have a few recommendations on things that I've learned, things that I kind of help my clients with. And again, number one, context is king. So this would be, I'll do two scenarios. So one, if you have competed and then you either have a show like the next few weeks coming up, like you're not done with your season basically. I always recommend going out and having like a post-show meal. Like that is something that I really enjoy. I've done it since I started competing in 2011, and usually like, you know, like friends or family or both will be there, and it's just like a fun time, or even like the other competitors, you guys can go out. It's something that I just really enjoy. It's like a social thing, it's a celebration. So if you have another show coming up, I would say, you know, go have this meal, but be, you know, a little bit more aware of like what you're eating and how much you're eating. I would generally say that like a meal is going to be good, maybe like a drink or two. I probably wouldn't get like a bunch of other just like crazy shit, and I would try and stay away from like really high calorie desserts. That's the one thing that like can really add up really quickly. So what I did for my other shows afterwards with either, and again, it depended on if I had a show like the next week or like 2 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever, is so there are good alternatives. Honestly, most of them are garbage. The only alternative that I found that actually tastes really good is Bam Body. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but they make the most amazing protein brownies, and they're pretty low carb, pretty low fat. They do have obviously some like sweeteners in it and some protein and stuff, so like it can kind of like sit in your gut if you eat too many. So just be aware of that, but they taste amazing. So what I would do is I would have like, you know, maybe like a glass or two of wine, have like a nice dinner, maybe share some like appetizer or whatever, and then have like some of these Bam Body brownies. Or if you're somewhere that has like really like low calorie froyo or like something like that, that's gonna be okay. But I would say that if you have a show pretty close afterwards, I would steer clear of like really high calorically dense desserts. And then the next day for Sunday, again, this will depend on if you have a show the next week, like right away, you will probably go right back into depleting in your peak week. And then if it's like not for another few weeks, what I would say is either you're gonna go back to tracking like a higher calorie day, or, you know, like just, you know, having more food than your normal day, but not like super extravagantly high yet, and just kind of keep it in check, but maybe not be like as meticulous, and then Monday get right back on it to like your dieting numbers. Of course, this will depend on like what you and your coach have decided that you need to do, what you need to work on. Like I don't know what you need to work on, but for the most part, if you've peaked right for the show beforehand, you're going to be like pretty filled out for the show, and then, you know, you're gonna have like a day or two of like the eating, and then even just like having just a little bit higher calories will fill you out better. And then if you need to diet back down, you'll still be able to do that, and it won't be something that's like uncontrolled. So that would be my tip, as like, you know, tips for if you are competing relatively soon. Now if you are done with the season, what I would do is I would, you know, same thing, make sure that you're gonna like go out and like have fun and like have a great dinner. But it's okay to like have that dessert. It's okay to like, you know, do all that. And then the next day, usually what I try to tell people is like stick to like a few like square meals, you know, maybe like it depends again on like what you're doing, if you're traveling or whatever. But you don't basically like the next day, you don't want to just like sit around and like snack all day long, because that's where things really kind of get out of control and like the binging tendencies really start to happen. And again, you don't need to eat like perfectly meal prepped meals, you know, the day after your show if you're not competing at all again, right? But what I've experienced before and what I know other people experience is if you just kind of like sit around and just like eat a little bit of stuff all day, like it just turns into like a little bit turns into a lot and just becomes like this kind of like all day thing. So try to have like a few square-ish meals, like maybe some snack stuff, but like try to keep it like meal based. The biggest problem that I see with people right after the show is the like food, storing food, right? And some people do this and they handle it well. I do not. Like, just being honest, it makes it so much harder on me, because your self-control is pretty limited at that point, right? So if you have all these treats that you've been saving up the whole prep and they're just like in your house or in your hotel room, like, bitch, you know you're gonna eat all that, okay? Like, I certainly would. Like, you're not just gonna be like, I'll just have 2 Oreos. No, no, no. You're gonna want the whole thing, and then you're gonna wanna dip it in some like Nutella or something. Like crazy shit starts happening when you're real lean and you have all this food. And once you start eating, you're like, fuck it, I've already started eating. And we've all been there. Like, the fuck it's are a real thing, and I'm gonna talk a separate video all on binging. But that is a real mental problem. And that can happen immediately after the show if you put yourself in a bad environment like that. So for me, I've always found that it's just better to kind of go out and get it. Whether it's, like having stuff around the house usually ends up being, or, like I said, like the hotel room or whatever, because we're talking about like the immediate like night after and day after of the show. That can just be really, really hard mentally. And then you just start beating yourself up, and then you start doing all these crazy thoughts like, should I have some of this? Oops, I already had some. Should I have some more? Like, you just don't want to do it. Like, just, if you want to have like, if you find like something that you really, really want, like, of course, like that's okay. Or if you like order something, like you and your friends order, like, I know like the big thing, like obviously like a lot of the like cookie companies and like stuff like that, and like people will order that and like they'll order a bunch and like they'll bring them to like the show and like everybody will like share, like that's totally fine, but if you have like a pantry full of like treats that you've like saved up all prep, most of the time that's gonna go down really, really badly right after the show. Because like I said, trust me, we've all been there. Once you start eating, it's just like, well, I'm already done this, I might as well keep going. And your willpower is like not even zero, it's like negative at the end of like a long diet, especially if you're like super lean, and especially if you've had a long season. So just things to consider, you guys. Post-show meal, I always recommend it, but how much you're eating and how like tight it is just depends on if you have another show coming up or not. Again, specifics will be dealt with you and your coach as far as like, hey, eat this, that, the next day or whatever, or we're going right back into peak week. But if you're done, that's actually when it can be really, really hard, because then you're like, well, I got nothing else to do, might as well eat. And then if you have all that food and then you have that mindset, like shit's really gonna go downhill really, really fast, promise you. So enjoy after the show. Especially if you're done for the season, you don't want to restrict to, like, you don't want to be like, oh, I'll eat this, but like I don't want to have that, and then you're like, oh, I really wish I would have had that, and then you like eat double that like the next day. Like, I think we all know what I'm talking about too. Psychologically, I don't know what that term is, but it's almost like you're like unsatisfied, so then you just keep perpetually like overdoing it, whereas it might have been better if you would have just like eaten it then and like kind of gotten it out of your system per se. So make sure that like you get what you want, you get what you've been craving, and you really like enjoy stuff. Like I had been dying to have like a Pizookie. I've never had one before. I know, so terrible. But after my last show, I knew it was gonna be a late night because the show was just like super late. And so there was a Cheesecake Factory and a BJ's right by each other. So like, hello, perfect. So we all went to Cheesecake Factory for dinner, and then we went to BJ's for Pizookies because I could finally get that. But like I hadn't had something like that after any of the other shows because I knew that like I was gonna be competing again. And I just stuck to either like, like Bam Bodies or like, like some froyo or like whatever, just like lighter desserts. Just cause like I said, you can start housing dessert, and that stuff's really, really calorie dense with like high carb and high fat, which is why it's delicious. And if you haven't ever had a Pizookie and you have like a free meal or something, please get the chocolate peanut butter s'mores Pizookie. Your life will be changed. So thank you guys for watching this. I hope those tips were helpful. Even if you're competing now or you're, just you're done with competing for the year, but you are, thinking about next year, because having a plan is crucial. And even if you're not competing, but you're just dieting, pretty heavily, I would say that this is still important. So just take out the obviously context of like, you just did a show and now you're going out, but you just finished a diet and now everybody knows like you hit a certain goal and they want to like take you out or do whatever. So thank you guys for watching, and tune in for the next one.